Hello, thank you very much for being here with us. My name is Javier Perez and I work as a Director of Research and Development for DreamLab Technologies.
And I'm Juan Escobar and I work as a Senior Cybersecurity Consultant for DreamLab Technologies.
This talk is based in our experience in the field of security audits, incident response, as well as in the research of new vulnerabilities and how they are applied in the ICS KillChain. ICS are devices that generally operate in critical infrastructures. These are not well known since they operate in a different environment compared with companies that have common information technologies. Also, many incidents involving ICS devices and the OT environment have had very important geopolitical connotations, which has changed the world related to the vulnerabilities existing in them, which has led governments to take measures that classify them as a critical element of the nation. As many of you probably know, today we are in what is called Industry 4.0, which is characterized by broad interconnectivity, data collection, analysis, and communication, which results in the optimization of the flow and quality processes. Although the benefits are many, this convergence between the IT and OT worlds increases the attack surface and as well as the number of new controls to implement. Based on this premise is that in the 90s, Theodore Williams, along with members of the Purdue University Consortium, developed the Purdue Enterprise Reference Architecture as a model for enterprise architectures, where the Purdue model defines the different levels of critical infrastructure that are used in production lines and the way to secure them. But as we know, it's very difficult to implement, maintain, and monitor all cybersecurity systems. We must remember that not all companies are the same. Therefore, the security mechanisms and architectures are different. But at the base, the activities to be carried out by an attacker will almost always be the same. That is why Michael Assand and Robert Lee adapted the KillChain model created by Lockheed Martin to the ICS world to understand, visualize, and organize the steps required for an adversary to reach their goal. So the ICS KillChain consists of two phases. Cyber intrusion, preparation and execution, is related to the IT world, and the ICS attack development and execution is related to the IT world. So in this talk we will try to emulate the most common vector attacks to get access to a remote power plant. Let's see what these steps are. For the stage 1, the first one is reconnaissance. Reconnaissance is an activity to obtain information about something through observation and or other detection methods. This activity is divided in two, passive and active reconnaissance, where the passive is in charge of searching for the information available in public sources, and the active interacts directly with the target for the collection information. Okay, let's continue. First, let's define our target and the attacker. In this case, the target is a nuclear power plant called Macros, and the attackers will be a group called APT666. If we search for this nuclear plant in Google, we have a result. And we can see that this plant is located in Switzerland. Also has another energy projects. Continuing with passive reconnaissance, we can do search in Chodan or Sumai, where probably there is not much information, which always should be the case. In LinkedIn, we find one profile related to the company, and not much else in internet. It is when the attackers carry out an active reconnaissance. Obviously, both activities can be carried out in parallel. As we know, the plant is located in Switzerland, so we proceed to scan the entire country looking for any reference to the company. One of the protocols consulted is SNMP. Although there are not many vulnerabilities for it, it provides information that may be important to carry out an attack. For this purpose, an automated tool is created and launched nationwide using the default community string to perform the authentication. As a result, we can see there is an IP related to the company. So in this tool, we will set the name of the database, the community, and the files with the IPs. So in Switzerland there is around 20 million IP, so this will take like a couple of hours to finish. But now we can see that we have the result related to the Macro's electric power plant. So in this IP address that was not linked of any site like Shodan or Sumai, we will scan to see what it is in this IP address related to the Macro's electric power plant. Now we will see what information this service can give us. For this we can use several tools, but now we will use one called SNMP check that will give us the data in an orderly way. As we see, it gives us quite a lot of information, but an interesting piece of information corresponds to the network connections. Here we can highlight a connection established to port 22. Which is generally used for remote administration, and we can see that it's accessible. Now we know that someone is connected, so we can assume that is someone who managed this system. Let's see what we find in the source IP. We launch a quick scan and see that port 80 is open. We access through the browser and see there is a login page. With a little more research, we see that type of device it is and what part of the world the IP is assigned. This is a home router located in the United States. As we take a look and do some research about it, and we don't have any vulnerabilities on this device. So as a summary of the first step, we have one LinkedIn account, one website, one Linux servers, one SNMP service, one interesting IP address, and one internet boarded device with no vulnerabilities. Next step, the preparation. In this step, there is weaponization and targeting. Both can take place, but this is not required. Basically, this step is to prepare the tools according to identify objective. In this case, we will use two vectors, the social engineering one, and the other we will call it infrastructure. Our goal for the social engineering vector is that the victim visit a malicious website and exploit a in order to take control of her computer. Our excuse will be an interview for a magazine specialized in cybersecurity issues in industrial environments. So for this vector, we will create a fake website where we locate our exploit for browser, and also we create a fake LinkedIn account for a journalist who is working on this fake magazine called scalawire.com. Okay, and now our plan for the vector 2 infrastructure is also similar to the previous one. We want to redirect all the web traffic to our malicious sites, but since we don't know who is behind this device, we need to hack the device and change the configuration of the DNS server. So in this way, the traffic can be redirected to our malicious DNS server. So we don't know the password, we have to find a way to enter to this device. So what we're going to do is try to find a vulnerability. So we will try to find our 0-day. What we're going to do is try to fuzz the parameters of this web application and try to find some kind of remote code execution, because these devices are common vulnerability to this kind of vulnerabilities. So we will try to fuzz all these parameters in the post request. So what we did was using a dictionary with a lot of commands in Unix, try to find a way to execute some commands. And we can see in payload 6 and payload 7 we have the answer what we need. So in this moment we find our remote code execution on this device. So this is a 0-day vulnerability. So now in the field keypad, sending a specific request concatenated to the parameter, we have a remote code execution. In this case, we send the command ID to identify who is running the process. In this case, it's a remote code execution with root privileges. So now we finished the preparation and weaponization and targeting. Now we go to the next step is cyber intrusion, management, enablement, and sustainment, entrenchment, development, and execution. So basically, this is the moment and we can act. So can we deliver, exploit, install, or modify to gain access to the system of the victim. We launch our command and control using methods such as connection to previously installed capability or abusive trusted communication such as the VPN. And then we have the sustainment, entrenchment, development, and execution phase, when in this phase documents a variety of end goals that an adversary may have. In this phase is when the adversary acts. So we can discover, do lateral movement, everything we know in common IT attack. So now our first victim will be an operator of the SCADA of the company, Macro's power plant, and now we will send her a message through LinkedIn. So we will put a link of our SCADA wire magazine, and now we will try to exploit a vulnerability in her browser. So for this, first we need to activate our exploit on the website, and now we can send the message. So we say a message saying that I'm a journalist for a magazine, and if she wants to participate in an interview, and we add the link for the website. So now we can see in the LinkedIn profile of the victim, she received the message, and she probably click the link, and she will have access to the website and see there is a normal magazine related to industrial technologies. But in the background you will see we execute the exploit on the browser, and we have immediately access to her machine. So we can start to look for credentials, and also we can look for interesting files like VPN or software like for password management like KeePass, for example. And also we can start look for some files related to the company. Also, for the second vector, infrastructure, we already find a remote code execution, so we will try to get some information about that device. In this case, we have the credentials of the device, so we will now try to crack it. So now we have the password of the device. So now we can log in the device. And we're now going to change the DNS server. So now we apply the change. So now we can take a look on the victim machine, and we can see the DNS has changed. So for example, if it goes to gmail.com, so we can see let's try to connect to Gmail. So any domain he wrote in the URL bar is redirected to our malicious site. So now we can see we have almost the same information, like credentials, a lot of VPN config files, and probably more information that we need for prepare the next step for the attack. So as part of command and control, we are using the same application. In this case, it's Metasploit. And as we showed previously, we have a lot of information related to the victims. In this case, we have the Windows credentials, and we can see this person is working not only for Macros Electrics, also for another power plant companies. And we can get, of course, some password manager like KeePass, and some sensitive files like details of the infrastructure. So if we take a screenshot of the victim, we can see it's a system administrator for an external company, work for Macros power plant. Also, we can use keyloggers for have the password for the KeePass, and we can see he have the sysadmin for almost a lot of sensitive infrastructure like the CM, SCADA, and the Active Directory. So probably this will give us domain admin immediately without any other attack. Also sensitive files, same for Lisa. Lisa is an operator of the SCADA, so we are interested also in their password management database. So we add a keylogger in the attack. So as a summary, we have access to two important computers, and now we have remote access to the plan with the config files they have in their computer. Also, we can pivot from their computers too. We have credentials for almost all the infrastructure and the detail of the infrastructure. So next is the stage 2, and I give you Juan Escobar to explain this part.
Thank you, Javier. Continue with the ICS KillChain, but in its second stage, more precisely in the development phase. In this phase, the attacking group tries to create new offensive abilities using the information from the previous stage. And this is possible because the attackers have discovered a Excel document with a list of devices. In this case, we can see an Schneider Electric PLC using the Modbus protocol. And first, it's necessary to understand the Modbus protocol. Luckily for us, this protocol is really very simple. We are going into too much details. The first 7 bytes of the package in red correspond to the header fields. Continue with 1 byte reserved to the Clareia function. This can be between 1 to 127 in hexadecimal. Finally, we have the data segment. The content of this field will depend on the function code we use. As you can see, the request is very simple. This one is a valid request using the function code 1 or read coils. And if a request is valid, the response will keep the function field corresponding to 8 bytes with the same value as the original request. But what happens when the request contains an error? In this case, the response will return 2 bytes reserved for exception. We have exception function code, which is 1 byte, and exception code. The exception function code is equal to the total sum of the value of the function used, 1 in this case, plus 80 in hexadecimal. So for example, if the function code in the response will be the value 81, if we use the function code 1, and if we use, for example, a function code 2, the response, if the request contains an error, will be 82, and if we use function 3 and the request contains an error, will be 83, and so on. And the second field, the exception code, is represented by a numerical value that will depend on the following flow. So if a request can pass the first condition, illegal function, this means that the function is valid. In other words, if the exception code is different from 1, the function is valid. So based on the error messages, it's possible to determine the existence of implemented function, and this is very helpful to build better attacks. It's also important to consider that an enabled Modbus function is always a possible attack. So with this knowledge, it is possible to build a tool that can list the implemented function. The tool sends valid Modbus frames, always trying to force error messages and list all the possible functions or the attack vector. So to continue our simulation, we or the attackers will focus in function 43, which is read device identification, and also function 90, UMAS, which is a Schneider Electric proprietary function. The function was discovered with a new enumeration tool. So what is function 43? In short, this is a function that will provide device information. So for example, vendor name, product code, revision number, etc. Here are some first tests with description function 43. So we can see some information about the PLC and the project. The other interested function of a Schneider Electric device is the function code 90. Among the many functionalities or subfunctions available, we are interested in the following three: 40, 41, and 20. We are start PLC, start PLC, and read memory block. So for the final attack, we are looking for a request that can easily generate a stop on the target device. For which in our controlled environment, request has been sent to our PLC using only function 19, which are in hexadecimal 5A, but with random data. So finally, it was possible to generate a denial of service condition by sending 2 null bytes, as you can see here, in the subfunction read a memory block. Finally, a tool was developed for this attack, which we call Modbus Killer. So the next phase is validation. In the validation phase, the aim is to certify the new abilities or development in a controlled environment with a specific hardware. All tests have been performed in a laboratory environment, such as the one we show below. So the following demo evidences a denial of service with the Modbus Killer tool. So here we are setting a value 1 for the slide ID 1 using the function called F5 to start the motor, and then we perform some banner grabbing with the check argument with the Modbus Killer script. This is performing a banner grabbing using function 43. And then we are sending the kill argument. We will use a function UMAS or function code 90. So we can see that the motor or the device stop when we send the 2 null bytes. So as you can observe, the resulting denial of service turns off all the PLC functionalities and also disconnect it from the network, forcing a physical restart. And the final phase is called ICS attack. This stage is used to deploying and executing the attack. So we have another video that simulates the final step in the simulate macros plant, electric plant. So as you can see, we send the kill command and the device was unresponsive. So this is a system to control the temperature of the water, and when the PLC stop working, the alarm will be activated. And also the temperature will rise. So just in case these vulnerabilities we found have already been reported to the manufacturers and have their respective security patch. And here are some recommendation overview that you can apply to avoid this type of attacks. And finally, thank you very much for your time, and do not forget visit us in our ICS research blog and our GitHub where we publish exploits and tools that can help you in your security audits. So thank you.